Victoria Bennett's manicured fingers tightened around the back of a chair in her opulent Beverly Hills living room. Less than 10 minutes into the interview, she had already made up her mind. This tutor wasn't the right fit, she told herself, though deep down, Victoria knew the real reason. The instant she had opened the door and seen Ava Thompson, a black woman with kind eyes and a modest blazer, Victoria's smile had faltered. Prejudice flickered in her heart. Now, as Ava sat across from her trying to explain her approach, Victoria abruptly stood up. "Thank you for coming. We'll be in touch," Victoria said abruptly, rising from her chair, an unmistakable dismissal. Ava's shoulders stiffened slightly, but she remained polite. "Of course. Thank you for your time," she replied softly. Before turning to leave, Ava glanced at the little boy playing on the carpet. 6-year-old Ethan had been silently lining up toy cars by the marble fireplace, paying no attention to the adults. Ava offered him a gentle smile anyway. "Goodbye, Ethan. It was very nice to meet you," she said warmly. At the sound of her voice saying his name, Ethan paused. To Victoria's astonishment, her son lifted his head and looked directly at Ava. His deep brown eyes locked onto the tutor's kind face. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. Ethan never made eye contact with anyone, yet here he was, quietly gazing up at Ava as if drawn by her voice. Ava slowly knelt to Ethan's level, her smile soft and inviting. Ethan didn't shy away. In fact, a faint spark lit in his eyes, a spark Victoria had never seen before. Victoria's throat tightened. In 6 years of silence, no expensive specialist or acclaimed doctor had managed to pull Ethan out of his world. But this woman, whom Victoria had been moments from dismissing, had just cracked open the door. The air felt charged with possibility. Victoria stood frozen, mind racing. Could she really send Ava away now? She had been moments from sending the tutor out the door. But now, a tiny glimmer of hope was glowing in her chest. Ethan's reaction was something she couldn't ignore. For the first time in a long while, Victoria wondered if she was witnessing the beginning of a miracle. If you want to see that spark turn into a miracle, stay with us. Victoria blinked away her surprise and invited Ava to stay a little longer. If her son was responding to this tutor, she couldn't end things now. "Maybe you could show me how you work with him," Victoria murmured, trying to sound composed. Ava nodded and gently sat on the carpet near Ethan. "Hi, Ethan," she said softly, picking up one of the small toy cars he had lined up. She rolled it in front of her with a quiet vroom. Ethan glanced at Ava, curious. When she rolled the car again, he tentatively picked up another car and, almost imperceptibly, mimicked her vroom sound. Victoria's breath caught. Her little boy was playing with someone for the first time. Heart pounding, Victoria slowly sat on the edge of the sofa, watching this fragile interaction. Ava kept her movements calm and her voice gentle. When Ethan reached for a green car, Ava said, "Green car? Ready, set, go?" in an encouraging whisper. Ethan met her eyes for a second and gave the tiniest nod, then pushed the car toward her. A stunned laugh escaped Victoria's lips, and she quickly covered her mouth. Tears gathered in her eyes as she witnessed her son respond eagerly, with no tantrums or retreating into himself. It felt like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. After a short, wonderful session, Ava ended by saying, "Thank you for letting me play with you, Ethan. I'll see you soon, okay?" To Victoria's amazement, Ethan reached out and lightly touched Ava's hand when she handed him his favorite green car back. The gesture was brief, but undeniably there. Her son actually made contact with someone new. Victoria walked Ava to the door, emotions swirling in her chest. I don't know how to thank you," she admitted, voice shaky with gratitude. "I've never seen him warm up to anyone like that." Ava gave a modest smile. "He just needs someone to meet him where he is. He's a special little guy." Victoria hesitated, wiping a tear from her cheek. All her earlier reservations about Ava, the unspoken bias she held, were crumbling. "Would you come back tomorrow?" she asked quietly. "Same time?" "Of course," Ava said gently, hoisting her bag over her shoulder. "We'll take it one day at a time." As the door closed, Victoria let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Maybe, just maybe, this was the breakthrough she had prayed for. Yet, as hopeful as she was, a flicker of anxiety remained. Could it really be this simple? Could Ava truly succeed where all those high-priced experts had failed? Victoria had been disappointed so many times before that she was afraid to fully believe in this progress. If you were in Victoria's shoes, would you trust Ava with your child? Over the next few weeks, Ethan made steady progress under Ava's gentle care. He began pointing at pictures to express his needs, giggling during games, and even attempting simple sounds. Victoria found herself smiling more each day, amazed and grateful. She even joined a few sessions herself, kneeling on the playroom rug in her designer slacks, happily doing whatever silly thing made her son laugh. For the first time, their home felt bright with hope. Not everyone shared Victoria's confidence. One afternoon, her neighbor and friend Olivia stopped by unannounced. Through the patio doors, Olivia saw Ava in the backyard guiding Ethan's hands as he finger-painted a messy, colorful poster. Paint splattered Ava's blouse and even Ethan's cheeks as he squealed with delight. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That's the tutor?" she muttered to Victoria. "Interesting. I assumed you'd hired one of those top child experts, and she's doing messy play here? In your yard?" Victoria's stomach tightened. "It's part of his therapy," she replied, trying to sound confident. Olivia gave a thin, doubtful smile. "If you say so, I just hope you know what you're doing, dear. Some of us invest in more qualified professionals for this kind of thing." With that subtle sting, Olivia left, and Victoria's mind churned with doubt. That evening, Olivia's words continued to fester. As Ava packed up her materials in the foyer, Victoria's old insecurities boiled over. "Ava," she said stiffly, avoiding eye contact, "I think we should pause the sessions for now. I'm considering a specialized clinic for Ethan." Ava's eyes widened in hurt surprise. "Pause? Did I do something wrong?" Victoria swallowed hard. "It's not that. It's just maybe he needs someone with, higher credentials, a different approach." Her voice sounded cold even to herself. Ava's face fell as she realized what was happening. "Please, Mrs. Bennett," she pleaded softly. "Ethan is finally opening up. He trusts me. Don't do this. Not when he's come so far." But Victoria's pride and doubt had taken hold. Her expression hardened, masking the guilt inside. "Thank you for everything, Ava," she said, forcing the words out. "But we won't be needing you anymore." No sooner had those words left Victoria's mouth than a small figure darted into the hall. Ethan had been listening around the corner. Now he threw himself at Ava, wrapping his arms around her leg and holding on with all his might. "Ethan!" Victoria gasped. She had never seen her son like this. Ethan's face crumpled as he began to wail in raw panic. He clung to Ava, his little shoulders shaking with sobs. He couldn't form any words, only broken cries of protest, but the meaning was painfully clear. He didn't want Ava to go. Ava dropped her bag, tears rushing to her eyes. She knelt and hugged the boy tightly. "It's okay, baby. I'm here," she whispered, voice trembling as she stroked Ethan's back. Victoria stood paralyzed, one hand over her mouth. Her heart felt like it was ripping in two at the sight of her child in such agony. "Ethan, sweetheart," she croaked, kneeling down and trying to pull him gently into her arms. But Ethan kicked and screamed, reaching out for Ava, even as Victoria held him. Ava's cheeks were wet with tears. She met Victoria's eyes, one last pleading look, but Victoria, choking up, could only shake her head. Her decision, however wrong, had been made. Ava pressed a gentle kiss to Ethan's head. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to him. "I have to go now, but it's going to be okay, sweet boy." With great difficulty, and with Ethan shrieking, Victoria peeled the clinging child off of Ava. Ava stood, wiping her tears. She looked at Victoria, her face full of sorrow. Victoria could barely see through her own tears as she opened the front door for Ava. Ava stepped out, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she murmured one more time, unsure if Victoria even heard her. Then she walked away down the steps, disappearing into the dusk. Victoria shut the door and immediately collapsed to the floor with Ethan in her arms. He was inconsolable, wailing, struggling, pounding tiny fists against her shoulder in frustration and heartbreak. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Victoria whispered over and over, rocking him as he sobbed. It was all she could say. That night, the mansion felt emptier than ever. Ethan finally cried himself to an exhausted sleep, clutching one of Ava's flashcards that had fallen from her bag. Victoria sat beside his bed, watching his tear-streaked face in the glow of the nightlight. Her own tears wouldn't stop flowing. She knew she had made the worst mistake of her life. In trying to protect her son's future reputation, she had shattered his present happiness. In the painful silence of the early hours, Victoria vowed that if given a second chance, she would never let her pride or fear hurt Ethan again. If you believe Ethan deserves a chance to be heard, don't give up on him. Early the next morning, bleary-eyed and heartsick, Victoria picked up her phone and dialed Ava. Her hand shook as the line rang. When Ava's soft voice answered with a hesitant "hello," Victoria burst into tears. "I'm sorry," she managed to sob. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. Ethan needs you. I need you, please. Can you ever forgive me? Please come back." There was a long, heavy pause. Then Ava answered quietly, "I'll be there as soon as I can." Less than an hour later, Victoria opened her front door to find Ava standing there. Ava's eyes were red-rimmed and worried. Before either woman could speak, Victoria threw her arms around Ava and pulled her into a tight hug on the doorstep. "I'm sorry," Victoria choked out, voice muffled against Ava's shoulder. "I never should have let you go. I was foolish, prideful. I hurt both of you. I am so sorry." Ava hugged her back, a few relieved tears slipping out. I know. It's okay," she whispered. "I forgive you. Let's go help Ethan." A tiny face peeked around Victoria's hip. Drawn by the familiar voice, Ethan had toddled toward the door. Now he stood in his pajamas, gazing up in disbelief. "Ava," Victoria said softly, turning him toward the tutor. Ava immediately dropped to one knee and opened her arms wide. With a hiccuping gasp of joy, Ethan launched himself forward, nearly knocking Ava off balance as he collided with her embrace. Ava laughed through her tears, wrapping him up and peppering the top of his head with happy little kisses. "Oh, I missed you, sweet boy," she cooed, holding him close. Victoria knelt beside them, her hand gently rubbing Ethan's back. He was giggling now, actually giggling, as Ava wiped a tear from his cheek. The boy then turned, eyes shining, and looked straight at his mother's face. "Mama," he said clearly, his small voice ringing like a bell in the quiet foyer. Victoria's heart nearly stopped. Time seemed to freeze as she realized what she had just heard. "Mama," Ethan repeated, a confident sparkle in his eye as if to make sure she understood. Victoria let out a cry of pure joy. "Yes, baby, Mama's here. I'm here," she answered, tears streaming down her face. She gathered both Ethan and Ava into a warm, trembling hug. Ava was laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it, Ethan!" Ava exclaimed, brushing his hair back and beaming at him. "You said your first word." Ethan squirmed around to face Ava and with a big smile flung his arms around her neck again. Victoria embraced them both, resting her head against Ava's and her son's. In that moment, the three of them held on to each other, hearts full to bursting. It felt as though all the fractures of the past day were mending in the warmth of that hug. From that day forward, Ava became a permanent fixture in the Bennett household, not just as a tutor, but as family. With her continued guidance and Victoria's unwavering support, Ethan's one small word blossomed into many. Weeks passed, and he learned new words almost daily. He could say juice when he was thirsty and name his favorite toy car. Car came out as a soft ka, which made them all laugh with delight. One afternoon, in a moment that moved Victoria to her core, Ethan looked up at his tutor and said shyly, "Ava?" There was not a dry eye in the house. Victoria's entire perspective on life shifted. She no longer cared about fancy credentials or what her high society friends thought. When acquaintances raised eyebrows at the unorthodox tutor working with her son, Victoria would simply smile and say, "This teacher helped my boy speak. She gave him a miracle." That shut them up quickly. Even Olivia eventually apologized after witnessing Ethan chatter happily about a drawing he'd made, something that would have been unthinkable before. In the end, Victoria learned a lesson as profound as her son's first word. She realized that none of her wealth or status had ever been the key to helping Ethan. The key had been something money couldn't buy, a person who cared enough to truly connect with him. True connection needs no status, only patience and heart. Because one compassionate tutor looked past prejudice, and one mother finally let go of pride, a little boy found his voice. The grand, cold house was cold no longer. It echoed with Ethan's playful chatter and laughter each day. And every night, when Victoria tucked her son in, she heard the sweetest sound she could imagine. Ethan whispering, "Good night, Mama." A simple phrase worth more to her than all the world's riches.